Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Public Schools Board of Education Agenda Review Committee. It is November 16th, 2011, and Dr. Lang, you have some things?
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Azuda. Board members, there is an orange folder in front of you that I'd like you to take item 27, revise your old item 27 that you received in your packet. There is a change. There is one change in 27, and if you look at item J, which is highlighted, you'll see what that change is. When I spoke to you last week, we let you know that we were recommending that we would house the Northside High School in the Perry facility. That stays the same. What is different is that we said we were proposing to close both schools and reopen a Northside High School. What this proposal is that we go with our original plan, which was to close Oliver High School and absorb students into the Perry Traditional High School program. We still intend to basically pull best from both programs, but we decided we did in fact not need to close both facilities in order to do that. I know you're aware that students will be getting CTE offerings still housed in the Oliver facility. And I had a question, and Ms. Mike, I'm glad you're here, about JROTC. I didn't know if you had done anything with that, even though that's not officially a CTE program, but I didn't know if you had a response to that or not, as to whether JROTC would stay at the Oliver facility, which I thought it did, but somebody needs to correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know if Angela Mike has the answer, but I'll try and she'll tell me if I'm wrong. That the JROTC program would remain at Oliver.
That's what I thought. Okay, so thank you very much. And I believe Dr. Lippert has another correction.
Yes, in the same section, item number 30, if you flip to that on the back page. In the actual amended item, I'll wait till everybody gets there. So you're actually in your packet now, not in the folder. So we're on item 30, sorry. Item 30 in your packet. I'm just checking to make sure everybody's there. Under the amended item, in the third sentence, actually, yes, it's actually the second sentence, but the third line. It says that opportunity to attend the approved machine operations program at Pittsburgh Langley. It would actually be Pittsburgh Brashear. The machine operation program is moving, if the board approves the Langley closure, to Brashear. So we'd like to change that to say Brashear instead of Langley.
Last page, the last part.
Amended item on the back.
Thank you.
Everybody okay? And we also have an, sorry about this, Mrs. Hazuda actually brought this to our attention. I believe it's in the payments authorized, number 18. There's a typo. Yep, we're in education. Thank goodness I don't have to do business. 18.
Sure my stuff's right.
In the actual tab, you'll notice that the total cost of the action is listed at $4 million. That's actually a typo. The correct amount is $430,310. So, okay. So we just added a 0 when we put it up there. So thank you, Mrs. Hazuda. Okay, we're ready when you are.
Thank you. Mrs. Fink has an announcement to read for us.
This evening, we wanted to remind the public that beginning this month, there is a new dedicated phone line for public hearing registration. The new phone number is 412-622-3868. Anyone wishing to speak at a public hearing must call 412-622-3868 beginning 1 week before and no later than noon on the day of the public hearing. The board's next regularly scheduled public hearing is Monday, November 21st, 2011. The new phone number will also appear on the screen during our publicly televised meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. All right, we're going to start with the proposals and grant awards. It's number 1 and 2 in the green papers. And Committee of Education, yeah.
Do that first?
We're not going to do the Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit tonight because Ms. Bear is out of town. We did get a notice saying that if we would let her know any questions, she would be happy to answer them at legislative meeting next week. There's only 2 items. So, yeah, that's why I was going to not say it at the end, but now it's out of the way. So we will start with ours, and we'll begin with the Committee on Education, Proposals and Grant Awards, numbers 1 and 2 on the green pages.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. For number 2, this is just pretty exciting, and want to thank Carol Barone Martin and her team for thinking of this idea, and to the Heinz Endowments for the funding to explore this plan. I know I've received lots of feedback from families saying, hey, if the district program would allow me to pay, I would, because I think it's a high-quality program. So I'm looking forward to seeing this move forward from an idea to reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley. Mrs. Khaleesi.
And on that same board tab, I was kind of curious, if somebody could maybe talk about it a little bit, just very briefly, because this is a little different, and if you could give us an idea of, like, who are the toddlers that are, I'm trying to think of how to say it, that are being taken care of through this program. Is it our students? Is it like pre-K? Can somebody just give a little bit of info on it?
I'll ask Carol Barone Martin, our executive director. This is her project, and I'll let her speak to it.
Carol Barone Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood Education. Actually, since we have so many classrooms in the Crescent Center, these children will probably be siblings of the 3 and 4-year-olds that are in there. We have come to find that that in Homewood there is a need for infant toddler programming, and that there's a lot of people that have been asking for it for that particular location.
And so this is the only area where we're doing it?
Well, we actually have 3 other infant toddler programs that are funded by Early Head Start, and they are serving children who are have teen parents in 3 of our high schools. In addition to that, the Early Head Start program pays for a home visiting model for 36 children. So they get services by someone coming into their home and working with the parent and the child, and give them some educational services.
Okay, so and this is great. I mean, I find this it's pretty cool. The only thing is that as we move forward and with budget cuts and stuff, I mean, how do we keep this sort of thing? Because people love when you have a great idea like this, and then when you have budget cuts and you have to cut back on it, obviously it's devastating then. So is that made clear up front that this is something that we can't support constantly, but obviously we would give it our best shot?
Yes, and as sometimes as funding moves around, it's possible that we might be able to pick up some of it with Early Head Start funding down the line. They already understand that that would be a great addition to our model if we could.
Since this is being funded by the Heinz Endowments, we would like to thank and acknowledge Mr. Bobby Vaught, who is with us this evening. You know what? This is so special and so important that we educate our babies, so thank you. Mr. McCray.
No question.
Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. This is on the same item. That's the submission to the Heinz Endowments for Early Childhood Program grant. and it's for 5 early childhood classrooms and 1 infant toddler room at Pittsburgh Crescent Early Childhood Center. And it says each classroom will serve up to 20 students, 3 to 4-year-olds. Funds are also requested to support the development of a business plan and a marketing advertising component. The purpose of the business plan is to explore parent payment models and how these might be implemented for families that are 300% or greater level of federal income. The question is, if these funds weren't provided from Heinz Endowment, what would happen at the Crescent Early Childhood Center?
These funds are actually helping us, I don't know if you remember back to when we presented to the board the funding model, but a portion of our Title I dollars went to fill the gap where we lost the accountability block grant to some extent. And when we were able to accept the money from Heinz, it allowed us to give more of the Title I dollars to schools to be able to run their after-school programs, because that was also a state-funded program that got cut. So this allows us to do more with our money currently, and allows us to maintain the 12 classrooms that are currently in the Crescent building.
Okay, so there's 12 classrooms total. I guess the question is, if we had not received this, would we still have 12 classrooms at Crescent?
We would still have 12 classrooms at Crescent, but what we wouldn't be able to do would be to provide the funds to the schools to be able to support their after-school program. So this money came in and allowed us to support more of our pre-K, which allowed us to use dollars that we were supplementing to actually support the other schools with after-school programming, because the state cut the after-school EAP funds.
Okay, were any other centers considered for use of this model? Or, I mean, it sounds like it's a pilot. Is that, could we classify it as that?
I'll let Carol talk through her work with Heinz around the selection of the location.
Okay.
Carol Broad-Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood. There was a particular interest in working with Heinz around Homewood because of the Homewood Children's Village. So we really wanted to focus on that community, and actually having support in that community by Heinz enabled us to continue to do what we're doing in other communities. So it's in a way, even though they're specifically, dollars are specifically going to Homewood, that overall support helped us to adjust and make sure that all the other communities still got a piece of the other funding that we already had.
Okay. And is the goal of this program to, I mean, I would hope it would move to a self-sufficiency model in the sense that early childhood could be provided for. And it sounds like we're finding out a way for those who don't qualify for the Title I funding could pay for the services. Is there ever a thought that this is going to, would this move elsewhere throughout the city, this same model?
The marketing and business plan is actually for the whole city, not just for Homewood. And the idea of that is to look to see if we could have people pay for the cost of care that are over the threshold that any of our funding pays for, which would be Head Start or pre-K counts or Head Start supplemental assistance. So 300% of the federal poverty level we don't have any way to pay for. And so that's the area that we would be looking for with our business and marketing plan to see if if parents could pay.
Okay, are we looking at the comparative costs, say, of daycare or other child care providers, as opposed to what we're doing? Are we under that amount, over that amount, or in line with it?
Well, that's part of the business plan, but we do have those resources at our fingertips as what the general cost of care is in the Pittsburgh area.
Again, if we want to focus on eliminating academic disparities, we need to focus on early childhood and to catch the babies and get them at that point, prepare them and send them on their way. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Vaught and the Heinz Endowment for this gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. All right, moving on to consultants and contracted services, numbers 3 through 10 on the pink pages. Dr. Allen?
Yes, I just want to note for item number 3, that I will be abstaining from this item since this is the place where I work. At next week's legislative meeting, we have had a long history with Pittsburgh Public Schools, but want to make sure that that's noted. For item number 7, for Rosemary Trell, in the program at Pittsburgh Lincoln, the program will incorporate fresh foods and cooking with an emphasis on nutrition. And I had a question about whether there was any connection with this program to Grow Pittsburgh, and whether any of these programs like this one and Grow Pittsburgh, if there's any room that it can be covered under food service. I'm just trying to think of how it could be rolled out to more schools beyond site-based budgeting, because it's just a great idea.
I'm going to let Dr. French answer that because Dr. Rudiak isn't here tonight.
As to your first question, I'm not sure of the affiliation, but I do know that Kate Bowers is working quite diligently on kind of organizing all of these efforts around Grow Pittsburgh and our other partners to this extent for nutrition and healthy foods. So we can probably come back to you with more information, but I know that she is working on trying to make sure that we have a system to spread kind of the availability of these programs among all of our schools. As a matter of fact, she's coming to leadership, I believe, in 2 weeks to talk to the principal, or talk to the assistant superintendents about how we're actually going to manage this project to make sure all of our principals have equal access.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley?
A question on number 4. This is the renewing of the contract for the Peterson event for, I think, 3 or 4 of our high schools for commencement. Dr. Atua, or Dr. French, have we addressed the issue of parking yet? First of all, Peterson is a wonderful place, but have we addressed the issue of parking?
No, we didn't.
Okay, let's move on. Well, thank you. I just want to, if we can consider looking into it. It's a great location for commencement, but the issue was parking in the past. And it would be great. I don't know if schools can work out a shuttle system, or where they can shuttle some of the parents or whatever, but that was an issue. Or if we can get some kind of arrangement with the University of Pittsburgh that for a couple of hours they won't ticket or they won't tow or they'll allow some kind of adjustment. But other than that, it's a great location. The other thing I've suggested, Doctor, if you would consider, I think I attended 3 graduations last year, and we had 3 different program setups. And I just think it's time to really kind of do it formally. And I want to just suggest a young lady, teacher at Perry High School that's been doing it for years, and they are in and out within an hour and a half. And it would be a wonderful opportunity, but if you decide, why am I drawing a blank on Miss Travelina, Perry High School. But, I mean, she pays close attention to detail. She has a team. Everybody knew exactly what they were supposed to do. There was no wasted time, and parents enjoyed it. So it may be a great opportunity for us to kind of formalize it, because I've seen different variations of the ceremonies, and some of it was good, but some of it was, there were just some areas that I think we were losing the audience. And so it may be worth that. And then finally, if we can check with the Peterson, I know that there are 2 vendors who usually attend every year, and they sell graduation balloons. Actually, they were chased away at the Civic Arena, even though we gave the arena, Mellon Arena, we gave them tons and tons of money over the years, but they actually had the nerve to chase these 2 adults away. And so if we can ask if that is a possibility, or if they would allow a section of the commencement just for those 2 individuals who's been following us, where they can provide the graduation balloons. And it wasn't a big operation. but it added a nice little flavor, and they actually went out and had them color-coded to the school's colors and the name on it. So if we can look into that, and they can let me know, and I can let those vendors know, and it'd be a great opportunity. So if you can look at those things, I appreciate them. Thank you.
So, Mr. Brentley, you don't want to say anything about it not being Father's Day?
No, you got that last year.
No, we got it last year. Oh, I'll take the opportunity and say how wonderful it is. Think about that. You know, that we are no longer competing. Fathers competing with the most important day of that child's life. 2 separate days, 2 great days, deserve their own day to be recognized. So no, I think it's a wonderful thing. It's
So
good.
thank you, staff, for listening.
Yes, it's a good thing.
Mrs.
Thank you,
Khaleesi.
that's it.
Thank you. On number 3, I really like this idea with YouthWorks. And I know it's a renewal, but I was wondering if maybe we ever gave any thought of finding a way to implement this sort of thing in all of our students throughout the district. Some point in their life, like an elective class or part of their senior project, something that actually puts them in some sort of a class atmosphere where they could learn exactly what YouthWorks is doing here. It's just an idea because it's so important. It's one of the things that our students walk out of our schools without having a great deal of skills on how to go into the workforce. So that's just a comment I wanted to make on that one. And on the graduations on number 4 in Peterson Event Center, when I was looking at the schedules, do we realize we're overlapping each other? Am I missing something?
No, we were not. No, we were not overlapping. Where are you looking at?
Like I'm looking at, like, for example, Alderdice's, the Peterson and Soldiers of Sailor, both of them are going to be, for example, the graduation for Alderdice and Kappa is both Friday, June 8th, between 6 and 6:30 in the evening. So, I mean, if you look at all of them, they kind of do, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, the reason for the Friday, if you notice that the graduation for this year is only on 2 days, Friday and Saturday. And in the past, we were paying about $150,000, so we had to cut it down to about less than $50,000. So we think that it will be most effective to book 2 days so we can bring the cost down. But yes, it is overlapping, but we've looked at these schools and we noticed that in these schools we have a large number of Jewish families, and because of the religious ceremonies that they have on sundown on Fridays, we have to be careful, and I plan the schedule with the principals. So there might be an overlapping if you have students in both schools. But when we discuss that, that is very rare.
Okay, I guess I really wasn't looking, and I should have, but I wasn't, as the parents. I was just, when I looked at it, I thought, okay, this is where I usually go and don't, and I realized I couldn't do any of them this year because of the way they're set up. And you're right, they have always been Saturday and Sundays, never Friday and Saturday. But so then the only other thing I would tell you is, well, I guess in Oakland, on a Friday in June, we won't have any real traffic issues because school will be already, Pitt will already be gone. They'll all be done. Okay, but I mean, that was what I wanted to see if you brought that to your attention. And I noticed the other thing on that one, and you do not have to come back to the table, Dr. Atua, is that these, well, never mind, it's okay. And then number 8. Do we already have contracts with Wesley Spectrum? And if we do, are they doing the same thing?
I'm going to try to answer this, and Mary Jane can get my back because she's trying to school me here in special education. We do already have existing contracts with Wesley Spectrum. However, this is actually a new model in response to some of the concerns at the schools. And instead of pushing in specifically into therapeutic classrooms, which is the normal model of support, they're actually providing support to students that aren't at the level of being assigned to a therapeutic support, so more of a proactive approach, and more students in the school can benefit from it. So it's an alternate to what we're currently doing, and monies were pulled from other contracts to be able to fund this.
Okay, so, and that being said, which is fine, I have no problem with whatever direction suits better for the student. I guess the only concern I do have is that we're not starting another contract when we have other ones already in place, that, you know, we can make sure that we don't just start giving out another contract. Thank you, Madam Chair, I'm fine.
Thank you. Mrs. Fink? Mr. McCray?
Just a quick comment about the graduations. I know 4 years ago, I was a proud father of a graduate, and he's now graduating college. He's one of the first group of children that have received the promise and have graduated college. Is there a way we can get a hold of some of the kids and have them come, maybe have one or two speak at a graduation? Or can we work that into the program somehow where they have already received the promise and the graduates can then have someone to look up to and say, this is where I want to be in 4 years?
That should probably be a kindergarten graduation.
I think I mentioned it once before, but I would like, if you can look into that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Again, just some small comments on the Peterson Event Center and Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall. We're using both for rehearsals and graduations, and it is a rather aggressive schedule to get them all done in 2 days, which is cool. Good. I was going to ask the question of why not more at Soldiers and Sailors than at the Peterson because of the cost, but I only say that in the sense that sometimes we go to graduations at Soldiers and Sailors and the whole balcony is completely empty and half the floor is empty and we don't even fill up the place, and whether or not some of these other schools could adapt to Soldiers and Sailors, because I remember back in the old days when I graduated from Soldiers and Sailors, we had the building packed. And I'm thinking there's a lot of wasted space going on, and are the other high schools that large that Soldiers and Sailors couldn't hold them or could hold them? But it looks okay in terms of the scheduling that we see here and the days we're going to get it done, and the fact that we're doing 5 and 5, that's fine. But if we could further reduce costs, to look into that possibility of utilizing Soldiers and Sailors more. The other thing with the parking, is there any chance that we could get a waiver of the parking fees for the garages that are near the Peterson? There's 2 large garages. One's by the Veterans Hospital and one's by the Trees swimming pool facility. Easy walking distance to the Peterson. Could they waive the parking fees that day for us to compensate?
Definitely, I will ask. The big issue is we were trying to reduce costs. So
You did that.
Yeah, everything that we do add cost, but definitely we will have to talk to them. I know that the schedule is very aggressive, but we are planning to do what Mr. Brentley is talking about doing, have it standardized so that students come in, go out, and we have a standardized system for graduation. Not everybody doing their own little bits and bits. So though we want that, but we want it to be purposeful and systemic throughout the whole school. So that's why we did that.
Very good. Could we also look into continuing the conversation with the University of Pittsburgh for the use of the Peterson Event Center for athletic events?
Okay.
If we could use that as a track record that we've had successful graduations there, no problems.
Where's Mr. Gavin?
So I only say that in the sense that because of the mishaps that occurred at the Palumbo Center, that they don't want to entertain Pittsburgh Public School activities there. But if the Peterson Event Center, we've had graduations there, if we could get our foot in the door and maybe have the City League Championship basketball games there, girls and boys or whatever, because our high schools are not big enough to handle those events. They're big enough, however, it's pretty hot and pretty crowded in those events, and parking is very bad around our schools. So if we can use that as leverage or to further, and plus we had a partnership with the University of Pittsburgh, with the University Preparatory School at Margaret Malines, and if they could use those facilities also. Thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Atua for saving us a substantial amount of money. It's very much appreciated. We'll move on to payments authorized, numbers 11 through 19 on the blue pages. And we'll start with you, Dr. Allen.
For number 18, regarding payments to charter schools for pass-through entitlement of federal IDEA B611 funds, it's good to know that the real number is $430,000 versus $4 million. A question that I had is the way this is accounted for, does it show up under our percentage of the budget that goes towards charter school payments, or does it show up on the special education budget expenses?
It would be an item that would be excluded from payment back to charters through tuition because it's a federal exclusion on the calculation. So they would not get double counted.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley?
I just wanted to ask a question, just quickly. I see this is a relationship with the Andy Warhol, or can somebody just tell me what is it again? Is this a renewal? Number, is that 12? Am I on that? This is renewal.
I do not believe this is a renewal. We had the ARCS presentation last night, and the Warhol is listed as a partnership, an expanded partnership, so that might be where some of the confusion is. To my knowledge, this is a new program that the Gifted Center is doing, but we are doing an expanded partnership and hopefully bringing forward an MOU for a larger partnership with Andy Warhol moving forward.
Okay. Now, and so the relationship with the district and the August Wilson Center is what?
I believe that's in your packet in the general authorization. We'll get to it, but we are entering into an MOU.
Okay, okay, similar to the World. Okay, that's all, thank you.
Mr. McCray?
Just a quick thought on the charter school pass-through on 18. Is this calculated at the beginning of the year or the end of the year?
This is calculated based on the December 2010 child count, and that's in compliance with the regulation.
I'm just wondering if a child left after they got their money, do they rip us off?
They got their money, they were there on December 2010.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Just want to draw quick attention to item number 11, that's Schmoop University Incorporated. Board authorization is requested to make payment to Schmoop University, an online prep and
You just want to say that.
review tool for advanced placement courses. Unique named university. The only thing is that we're paying for this service. It's not to exceed $6,000. It's going to help us with advanced placement courses. The only thing I just take a little exception to when it says that the rate is $6,000, however, it would have been 15, therefore you're saving 9. I don't look at that as a savings, because anytime you spend money, you're not saving money. If the amount had been paid the prior year of the 15, and they gave it to you the next year at 6, then you would have saved money spent. But when you're spending money for the first time, it's a good marketing tactic, and it's used all over, but just to take note of that. On item number 16, Child's Way, board authorization is requested to make payment to the Child's Way for the provision of comprehensive services for Head Start eligible children enrolled in their program. It says that the child care collaborator will receive an incentive of $1,000 per classroom after progression from one star level to the next. Total payment should not exceed $1,000. Is there only one classroom involved, or is there more than one?
Carol Brown Martin is indicating that there is only one classroom involved.
Okay. Okay, that explains that. Just real minor item on item number 14, that's English as a second language program translation services. And it talks about in the last sentence of that first paragraph, it says individuals are contacted through community service agencies such as Jewish Family and Children's Services and Catholic Charities I was just wanting some more explanation of what that means, contacted by those agencies.
These are the typical agencies that as our families move into the area, they actually help locate and relocate families. And so these are the ones that are the typical ones that liaison with the district and for us to help with placement opportunities and get them enrolled in the district.
Okay. Is there any way that folks can take advantage of this program without going through those agencies?
Absolutely. This translation service is the central office, so that when any publication comes out from communications and marketing, we're able to translate those for any of our ESL students in the district, as well as when we're enrolling any family, regardless. It's just that these organizations really bring a lot of families to us, but every family is covered that we serve and every student under this tab.
Thank you. Thank you.
On the second page of item 14, down at the bottom, it has the ESL regional centers. If you look down the list, it has Concord Pre-K 8. And although there's many folks that would love that to happen, it's a Pre-K 5. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to general authorizations, number 20 through 31 on the yellow. And we'll start with you, Dr. Allen.
Thank you. For number 20, regarding Summer Dreamers, and this is the camp will be open to 2011-2012 PPS K through 8th grade students. And the camp, I'm reading down further, the camp will be offered Monday through Friday beginning on July 16th, 2012 through August 17th, 2012. And the question is, since Summer Dreamers has been hugely successful, we knew that this was the last year of stimulus funding. Is that correct? You're shaking your head, Dr. Lang. Are we expecting additional funds for this, like from the Wallace Foundation? And what is the total amount we're thinking that we're going to get for the program? And what structural changes, if any, or capacity limits are we expecting, for the upcoming year based on funding differences? I know that was loaded.
Well, Dr. Lane, I don't want to speak for you, but I was going to ask, because we have Kate Reed here, if you're okay with her answering the question? Okay. Thank you. We're going to ask Kate Reed.
Kate Reed, Executive Director of Student Support Services. We are anticipating that we'll be bringing forth tabs. We did bring forth a tab, I believe, last month to accept approximately $400,000 from the Wallace Foundation. We are also going to be bringing forth a tab in December from the Fund for Excellence, which is also agreed to help fund significantly for this coming summer. And most likely an additional tab in late winter from the Wallace Foundation for additional funds for next summer. So you should expect those in the next few months.
Thank you. So right now, are you anticipating that we'll be able to maintain the same level of services, and/or what structural changes or capacity are we expecting? And will that be, I guess, a brief to the board at a later point?
At this time, our best analysis is that we'll serve approximately 1/3 of the students that we've served in the past, and we will be coming to the board with some updates about that in the coming weeks as we finalize that information.
Thank you. For number 21, regarding the purchase of a 5th grade novel, The Hope Chest, it sounds like it's a great update, a more appropriate update, and my question is, when was the last replacement for the text that's currently being used?
This is actually, we actually last year adopted the first novel in 5th grade. It was Just Like Martin. This is the second novel, so there isn't a novel series in 5th grade. It's based on a text-based program, all short stories. Because of the success that we had with Just Like Martin, we're adding a second novel to the 5th grade, and what we'd like to do over time is have the whole 5th grade more lengthy text that has more text complexity for our 5th graders. And that's moving the district towards what's required of us under the Common Core national standards.
So we already approved it, and it's just as they come forward, no, we did not?
Well, you approved just like Martin. You don't have to approve, the board doesn't have to approve supplementals like a novel, for example, because it's not the core text, but because we're doing a pretty new initiative and it's new for fifth grade, we like to bring these to your attention. So we have in the past brought certain things that are really big items so that the board is aware of it and also knows the process that we followed was thorough to move the novels into fifth grade, because it is a change in the core.
And do we get input from parents in addition to our teaching team related to these new novels?
We sure do, yes. It was a regular textbook selection committee that we ran.
Thank you. And I'm not going to steal Mr. McCrae's thunder about all these wonderful, great donations that we have in here, some just outstanding donations. So thank you for all of those organizations who are providing resources in kind to Pittsburgh Public School students. For number 27, and I know we have an amended item in front of us. Obviously, this is going to be, this is a painful decision before us in terms of, voting on closing schools and reconfigurations. I do want to say, Dr. Lane, for item J, I think that it was a good decision about making the change back to what was originally proposed regarding Peary, because I feel like it's the only school on this list that did not meet the criteria that we set forth in June in terms of under-enrollment, issues with academic achievement, and there were two other criteria that were on there. So it did not meet those criteria, so it makes sense to me that it should not be on the list about not being closed, and I think it was a good decision to go back to the original recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, for number 22, the partnership with the August Wilson Center, there is no fee involved here? How does it work?
That's common with our partnership agreements. We typically don't enter into MOUs. The one that also comes to mind is the one that we have with the Heinz History Center. I think we highlighted last night how generous the community has been in supporting. August Wilson Center, even without this, was doing so much work, but we wanted to go through this because the board asked for it, and we wanted to let you know what they're doing with our English teachers, our social studies teachers, and working with our students, not only in the arts programming and the dance that Mario talked about last night, but also across some of our academic programs. So it's really to formalize our partnership and recognize the partnership is at no cost to the board and how fortunate we are to have them as a partner.
Now, for the Andy Warhol, there is a fee, or was it?
There was a fee because the one school is doing something with them, outside of the district, but we are working on a similar MOU at no cost through our arts education program.
Okay. So in return, do we do anything else with them? For instance, the August Wilson, if they're having, bringing in entertainers or something that's related to some of our students, do we commit to purchasing a block of tickets, or do we do anything else along those lines?
We don't have any arrangements where we're paying August Wilson Center for any services. We do work closely outside of the MOU. I mean, there are services that they're providing to us still at no cost. Kappa's right down the street, and I know that they have extensive use of the August Wilson Center at no cost as well. But if we would have a cost to a partnership, we'd be required under your board policy to bring it through as a contract.
Okay. Well, look, I'm happy that we can get anything free, but I'm also concerned too that that we not get into a habit or a regular business practice that for those that are in the arts, that we can get them to volunteer or provide their services at no charge. They should be compensated. August Wilson Center has to do a lot of crazy things like keeping their lights on as well and keeping their doors open. So I'm happy for that, but I also want to just make it very clear to this board, it's a wonderful facility. We should be using it, but we also need to pay our fair share when there are opportunities to keep their doors open. And I remember reading couple of months ago that there were some issues there at the center, and I just don't want to be a part of, or I don't want to say that we're one of the agencies that pulls on them and not are taking care of our fair share. The Summer Dreamers, and I'm glad we're doing this early, but let me suggest early on, who is at Caton Street, is that Summer Dream? Will you please make sure that we extend ourselves and make sure that it is diverse and that we really reach out to all service providers and vendors and all that good stuff when we begin to plan for those, the upcoming programs. We have tons of entertainers and tons of folks in this community, especially women-based and African-American-based and other ethnic groups, and we should be taking advantage of it. Our kids should have a very wonderful, wonderful experience along those lines of true diversity. And number 27, Dr. Lane, I appreciate the change here, but I guess it's also important, too, that we also just, since you're not closing Perry, then there is no need for the change in name. That name change was based upon the fact that we're closing and creating and starting something new. So I would hope that you would include that as an addition to your changes here. If not, I can also do it on the floor as well. But so it would be clearly understood that it is the Oliver students moving into Perry, and Perry will stay Perry, the name.
Yes, unless you or another board member would propose to change it, Mr. Bentley.
Change the name?
He said unless you were going to propose it or someone else.
I'm not following you. Please say it again.
I was teasing you, Mr. Bentley.
Here, I'm right over my head. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. So we'll do it on the floor, or it's going to be already included? Okay, beautiful. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi.
Thank you. On number 27, I just want to bring to the attention of my colleagues that one of the items in here is a feeder pattern change for the Minadeo and Greenfield area. And in the last, oh goodness, a little over 2 months, we've had some community meetings. I need to thank Kate Reed, David May Stein, Barbara Rudiak, Nancy Costco. I don't want to leave anybody out. Eric Rosenthal.
Codman.
What did I say? Costco. Nancy Codman. Sorry, Nance. Eric Rosenthal, Melissa Wagner, Ms. Burgess. Help me, folks. There's a couple more. I know there is. Ola Flowers. Anybody else? I don't want to miss anybody and end up hurting anybody's feelings. Anyway, they really worked very diligently and very hard to work with the community. This has been one of the most open and transparent processes that we've taken, and the community appreciated that we went to them. We've had 3 meetings with them. We've allowed them to be part of the process. Actually, they, at some point, even took over part of the process so that they helped us as we helped them. So it all worked out very well. But I do want to point out that when we do things like this, feeder changes or whatever we do it because we're trying to be cost-effective and have equity throughout the district for everyone. But that doesn't mean that we vote on something and close the door and never look again to see what we've done. We evaluate what we've done and then go back and see if there's anything we need to tweak. The public sometimes thinks we just do things and then never look back again. We don't operate in that manner, and I think it's important that we make clear to the public that we are very open-minded and very open to hear what the public has to say. That's why we have public hearings, and to take into consideration what they suggest so that we can make the best decision for everyone who's involved. So I thank the staff, and Dr. Lynn, I thank you for allowing the staff to assist me anyway, assist them, but more importantly, that they have really worked very hard on this, and I appreciate all the work that they did as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Mr. McCray.
Thank you. We'll start with 23, Donation Venture Outdoors. Thank you, Dr. Allen. not stealing my thunder. This is great. This is free family passes for Venture Outdoors. There's a donation, number 24, from Barnes & Noble for the early childhood program for holiday books. I'm sure Twas the Night Before Christmas will be in there somewhere. 25, a donation of framed artwork to Pittsburgh Arsenal. Sounds like a great idea. And 26 is the best one of all, is the mobile site-based food banks. I think it's a tremendous idea for, to help our children and their families. Number 27, the realignment. This is the most difficult decision any one of us has to make, and nobody's in a more precarious position than myself, because I represent both Oliver, Langley, and Perry. There's a large contingency here tonight from the West End. They're asking for a reinvestment in the West End. Maybe relooking at some things and finding a way to bring an environmental high school under the West End. Again, like Mrs. Khaleesi said, we look back at what we've done, and maybe we can tweak it later on. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know where to go from here, to be honest with you. But they are very appreciative of Chartier staying open. I'm so glad that you toured the campus, because you fell in love with it probably as much as I did when you toured it. That is a fantastic campus for children down there at Chartiers. The situation at Langley, I just don't know where to go with that. I'm glad that Oliver and Perry are working out. I think a name change would be tremendous for Perry. Oh wait, Oliver Hazard Perry. His name's still right there across the street on the wall. So we're good with that. For those, there's a mural across the street from the school, a tremendous mural that one of the businessmen put up, and they put his name, his full name is Oliver Hazard Perry. Commodore Perry's full name is Oliver Hazard Perry. So it works out pretty good. The Hazard, yeah, well, he was sort of a hazard. There's not much else to say. I'll have to, thank you.
Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Just a brief question or comment on the donation Venture Outdoors to the Early Childhood Program. They're giving family passes. The donation from Barnes & Noble to the Early Childhood Program and Teen Parenting Program. In both cases, will there be enough passes for all the parents, that passes and books for all the kids that want them? I only say that in the sense that if you say that the value of the pass is $20 and there's only $5,000 as the estimated donation, that would be like 250 passes. Is that enough, or will there be more to meet the demand for that? And also with the early childhood, they're talking about 1,900 preschoolers, 311 teen parents receiving books. Will that provide enough books for the parents and students that want the books? And then on just the number on the Barnes & Noble, which students, which parents?
Carol Barone Morton, Executive Director for Early Childhood. The Venture Outdoors was an estimate because the parents need to attend a meeting on, how important outdoors is for their child. So that was an estimate. If we get more, they're able to provide us with more. And for the books, that is the number of children that are currently in our classrooms. So it is a book for every child in our classrooms, including our early Head Start classrooms.
Very good. Attention to number 26, that's the donation of mobile site-based food banks. The schools that were selected: Pittsburgh Arlington Pre-K-8, Pittsburgh Stevens K-8, Pittsburgh Woolslayer, and each child's going to get 22 pounds of food. 25% is going to be fresh fruit and vegetables. Again, the question is, well, in this one, the question is, how were these schools selected, and why not other schools?
We're going to bring David May up just because, spread the wealth and everybody gets the opportunity, right? We don't want him to get jealous of Dr. Atua.
As he's here,
It's an empty seat.
okay, by the time he decides where he's gonna go.
David May Stein, Assistant Superintendent, K-8 in middle schools. The schools that were selected for this project were the schools that received new libraries through the Target grant. And so this food distribution program is coupled with the library program, funded with the Target grant.
Okay, that explains it, but I'm sure there's hungry kids all throughout the district. Okay, thanks. Item number 27, item A talks about the Board of Education of the School District of Pittsburgh authorized the closure of the school program at Fort Pitt Pre-K 5. The only question I had there was, there's a board tab or tabs coming up, or at least in the capital plan, capital budget plan regarding the closing, well, work going on at Pittsburgh Montessori. And it had been mentioned that they're relatively close to each other. And the question would be, why invest in Montessori if Fort Pitt is a better facility and they're relatively close? The only question I would have is that when I rode past Pittsburgh Montessori the other day, it appeared that the brick had been cleaned on the outside. And the question is, had that taken place?
That was part of the work that was going on. There was some water damage in the one side of the building, because I was there one Sunday morning, and made sure I followed up. But the plans for the future, we're going to be reevaluating and assessing, as we had talked on November 7th, about the work that we would want to undertake at Montessori. It's just on the drawing board, but nothing's been brought forward to the board to approve an architect or any work to go on. So while it's in the plan, nothing would proceed without discussing with the board further.
Okay, I hope that's the case. Again, if I noticed the columns all around the building were cleaned because they were brighter than they've ever been.
I'll check when that was.
It made, the school looks nice on the outside. I mean, the columns and et cetera, but having gone past there on numerous occasions, it struck me how clean and pretty the columns looked on yesterday when I went past. So the question was whether or not that masonry restoration work had started, or was that a part of what's in the capital budget or not. Question on item B, that's keeping the Langley facility open and putting in a new K-8 school there. Is there any concern with the scale of that building being to accommodate that age population?
No, go ahead.
We believe that we can provide a quality educational program for children in the Langley facility. First of all, it is one of our, well, it's beautiful. But the other factor is, I think, is substantially air-conditioned, which, yeah, we don't have too many of those. Honestly, it's at least my personal belief, air conditioning makes a big difference. So that's another advantage that it will have. But yes, we believe we can accommodate. I know that Mr. McCray asked about Chartiers, and yes, I did fall in love with Chartiers. I mean, it's cute, it's wonderful, but the real reason the decision to leave it as is was the cost of moving to accommodate pre-K kids at Langley would have been pretty, at least our estimate that it was pretty significant. And so based on that, that's why we recommended that we not make that particular move. So
The reason I ask is generally when facilities are designed originally, the scale is appropriate to the size students. Like elementary schools are a certain scale, middle schools are a certain scale, and high schools are a certain scale as far as how high the lockers are, where the water fountains are. You design how big the gyms are. You design things for bigger kids. You design things for smaller kids. So we're putting first and second graders in a high school. That's the concern there, is whether or not it would be adequate for them. I can understand when you move a middle school to a high school or a high school to a middle school, even though the high school gets cramped in that second scenario, but going from elementary to high school. But I agree, I don't disagree that the educational program would be adequate and successful for the kids, but I'm just looking at the scale of the building. I was going to recommend that when we talk about closing buildings, that the board actually visit the buildings, or if we're talking about moving students from one building to another, that the board actually visit the building so we know what we're talking about before we vote on it, to get a hands-on idea of what we're getting into. Item L, we're planning on moving the McCleary Early Childhood Center, okay, to Arsenal. That had been proposed early on, and we had decided to keep it there. What caused the change at this point in time?
So I do have a vague recollection because this was at least a year ago, and we did pull McCleary off. And I think that was before we ended up with the fiscal realities of keeping buildings open, and the reality that Arsenal is severely under-enrolled for the size of the buildings, that we could be more cost-effective by consolidating McCleary, saving the cost of that building, and using Arsenal more effectively. And Dr. Lane, you can add if...
Yeah, it was a year ago. I think it was around February that we had that conversation before and decided against it.
Okay, and on item M, which is the resolve the pending approval of the above A through L, that the Board of Education of School District Pittsburgh authorizes adjustments of attendance areas. Could somebody just quickly just explain how that's going to take place? Or how and when? Are we just going to balance kids or what?
I'll defer to Dr. Lane, but I was thinking Kate Reed would be the most appropriate to provide some detail. Kate?
Kate Reed, Executive Director, Student Services. Mr. Sumter, just to clarify, are you interested just in the next steps that would occur after that, or the specifics on the lines themselves?
The next steps, I would say.
Okay. If the board were to approve these changes, we would be able to immediately have a data file that would have all of the families that would be affected, and we would immediately do a mailing to them with information on this before the Christmas holiday, so they'd be aware of the changes as well as the next steps they would take if they wanted to contact us around their options for the school year. And then we would work with our cross-functional team to ensure that all of the necessary transitions were put in place for the students affected.
Is this getting at trying to have the maximum number of students in each class to save money, to balance those off? Not maximum number, but...
Yes, what we did was we worked to try to ensure that we would have those average class sizes that were referenced during the budget meeting at all of the largest number of classrooms we can in the schools.
Thank you. I want to move to item number 28, and it's on page 15 of 18. Well, I'm working off the white sheet, but it's the amendment that talks about the resolution where Westinghouse will no longer be a magnet, and I guess the only concern that I have there, that at one point, if it were a magnet, generally you set up magnets to draw students to the school, and in place of the magnet, is there going to be a draw or a theme to draw kids to that school?
I know that when the planning went on in regard to the school that opened in August, I heard basically kind of two themes. I heard a theme around leadership and around social justice. And so there's nothing that we're doing here that would necessarily change that. But I think that what does need to happen is there needs to be more clarification for both teachers and parents, frankly, about what that really means and what that looks like on the ground. So there was a theme agreed to, which I don't have any feedback from any of the teachers or parents that they would like to change that, but I'm just saying I think it needs to be a more, if it's going to have a thematic base, it needs to have a more robust appearance of that theme.
Okay. Changing the magnet status, does that change that whole thing we went about as to students choosing what school to go to, or one's living on one side of the line or not, or are they just assigned according to the feeder patterns?
Well, they would be assigned according to feeder pattern. Of course, part of what we went through was, one, trying to balance the enrollment with the closing of Peabody, so that was one question. And then, of course, the fact that Westinghouse began as a single gender model made that even more complicated. So because of the change we're proposing here, it doesn't necessarily change it doesn't change the line, but it does mean that we just would abide by the feeder pattern.
And in that case, losing the magnet status, you somewhat lose the transportation component that goes along with being a magnet. So those kids that live 1.5 miles away just get bus passes? I can't hear nobody. I can't hear.
It's because we're debating.
We got to debate on the record, so we can.
Yeah, we'll debate on the record. As I understand it, and if somebody, please, Kate probably knows more about magnets and transportation than I do, but as I understand it, that they would have to, if they live beyond the distance for walking, they would get a bus pass, yes. But as I think about where that is, I'm not sure how well that would actually work, because I'm afraid what would happen is a lot of children would end up needing to go downtown and come back out from town, which isn't really a real efficacious way to get to school.
To clarify, magnet students also receive bus passes if they're more than 1.5 miles. It's all students. So any students we have now who are there on magnet status more than 1.5 miles are also receiving bus passes. We use the same model for magnets as we do for all schools. I'm sorry, 2 miles. Thank you, Mr. Camarda. At high school level, it's 2 miles.
Thank you.
I think the board's also aware that under Operation, I believe it's called Safe Passage, that Homewood Children's Village is providing some of our students who give parent permission transportation that actually live in Homewood and are within that limit. The district is not providing this transportation, but the village is.
Thank you. I see the explanations of what's going to happen with CTE. I see something about Health Careers Academy, Culinary Arts Academy, housed at Westinghouse, and then those CTE students be accounted for at their home schools. Additionally, the legislative meeting in 2011, January, cosmetology, business finance, information technologies be housed at Westinghouse. Could I get a quick summation of what CTE is going to look like at Westinghouse?
We're not proposing any changes to the Westinghouse CTE program. All that information is there because of the amount of times that we've come back to this tab. So all of the information is there, but the CTE programs do remain intact there.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item number 30. That's the amendment of the RHVAC and welding programs will be moved from Pittsburgh Oliver High School to the South Vote Tech Annex facility. Does this affect the cluster arrangement that we had, and will students outside of clusters be able to get to the South Votech Annex, or do they have to be in that cluster location?
Okay, I just want to clarify to make sure I was clear earlier. So because this is another amended tab, what the tab is asking you to approve is that we're closing the welding program and having those students receive welding skills in our machine operations program, which currently is at Langley, which we would like to move to Brashear. So all of what I'm saying is part of the cluster model, so all students would be able to continue to access the machine operations, but what we're asking the board to do is to close the welding program that currently is housed at South Annex. And the HVAC would continue to be at South Annex, but the welding would be moving into the machine ops.
What was confusing is when you said the welding's not gonna be at the South Oak, and then the heading says it will be moved to South Oak. So what,
It's because we're calling on 30, the title is because it's an amendment to the originally titled tab. So I do agree it's confusing.
okay.
So I hope that explanation clarified for the board, otherwise I can try again.
Then the question is, those CTE classes at South Oak Tech Annex, is that a part of a cluster, or will kids be able to get that citywide?
So the South Vo-Tech has 2 programs right now. Both are clusters, welding and HVAC. What the board is voting on in item number 30 is closing the welding program. There will be no longer welding offered to our students. Those students would then be, the students that we currently have enrolled would receive welding skills through our machine operations program, which would be a cluster program offered at Brashear.
And South Vo-Tech Annex will have what?
What would remain at South Vo-Tech or South Annex would be the HVAC program, which is a .5 program right now.
Would that be available to students citywide or just in that cluster?
It would also, HVAC would remain open citywide.
Thank you.
Can we propose also a change to this heading to make it clear for when we go to search in the future, and just delete will be moved from, and just have that say amendment, RHVAC and welding program? I think that's what we're going to do as we move this to the legislative meeting, and just wanted to go on record so that there would not be any confusion.
If I could just piggyback on something Mr. Sumter said, when you close this welding program and put it in Brashear along with that other program you already have there, and you say they will be receiving welding skills, do you mean truly welding skills? I mean, and then who will be teaching that? Will it be the teacher that's teaching whatever there now? How's that work?
I'm going to try, but I'm going to ask Angela, because, you know, Angela's schooling me well, as you can tell, but this really gets into her expertise. But essentially, the machine operations, they receive a certification in metalworking skills, and they do a lot more than just welding. So students won't receive 2 certifications if they're successful in the machine ops, but what they will have is exposure to welding through the metalworking and hopefully the certification that comes from the machine ops. And then what that does is it allows them that if they really do have a lot of skill and interest in welding, that they could then pursue that on promise dollars as they move into other programs, 2-year programs or certification programs.
So they're not going to be losing any real skill by combining these. I mean, I want to be sure that there's a skill set that's still, and I guess what I'm really looking to hear is that whoever is teaching it actually is qualified to teach that skill. Welding is not something you want just somebody to be doing. It can even be a little dangerous, okay? So.
I'm going to ask, because this is getting into levels of certification, things like this is Angela's.
Thank you.
Angela's lane, so we'll let her.
Angela Mike, Executive Director, Career and Technical Education. Yes, the teacher is certified to teach certain welding skills, not all welding skills, but certain specialty skills, such as the welding, the cutting, the soldering, and around the brazing areas. So they will get some of those specialty skills, and the teacher is certified to teach that. Another point that I wanted to bring up, there's 8 other areas in machine operations that students will get exposed to be prepared for industry, to go out to work, or to continue post-secondary education. And we worked with the Three Rivers Workforce Investment Board, and we were told that over the next 10 years, this area in machine operations will really grow, and those skills will be used, and there will be jobs available.
And Ms. Mike, and I'm going to end it here. Just so I feel confident about this, and it's just me and the CTE thing. Is it going to be in the curriculum that these skills would be, these students will be exposed to these skills at whatever level that teacher is certified in, and not just we're pushing you in here and, you know, if you get to see it, you do. You see what I'm?
Those skills will be in the written curriculum,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Lane, have we, I know when we started closing schools and changing feeder patterns, there was a mention that there was a program by the University of Pittsburgh or CMU, this great program that can help track and, has anybody checked to see that if any one particular group is impacted more than the other? And let me explain it. Every time we make changes, you know, sometimes it can end up where most of those students have been gerrymandered out of their own school or out of a particular school that they're dealing with. And if it's an issue as far as race, that could end up to look pretty bad. And so this great, wonderful, magic system of Pitt or CMU, whoever developed it, are they able to pull that information out?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Brentley, but I certainly can find out. But I know that the issue around students moving and race of students moving has been raised several times. And I just want us to remember that we have certain neighborhoods of our city that have had disproportionate decline in terms of the number of residents and especially the number of students that actually attend PPS schools. And some of those neighborhoods, I think you only need to drive to, as you drive through, you can clearly see why schools might be closing just because of the simple number, they're not kids there anymore. So, as I said, I certainly understand your concern, but I also want to reiterate the fact that what drives what schools close is largely driven by enrollment. And so schools that are full typically don't close, and schools that are sparse and where we have a lot of empty seats, then those are the ones that we have to look at. So as I say, I don't know the answer to your question as to whether they can sort it out by race or not. But given the fact that the majority of the students in our district are African-American, it would be my guess that there are probably going to be more African-American students impacted than there would be white students.
Well, you know, I appreciate that, but I also want to make it very clear that we cannot only use the excuse that, you know, there's not that many people in a particular neighborhood or community. That is a factor, but when you see over the last couple of years that every time there are school changes, you see most of the kids that are put on buses and traveling are African Americans, or most of them that are placed in other communities. Perfect example. You know, I cannot understand, won't be supporting it, the justification for closing of Northview Elementary. Newer building, it is a campus, great parking, located in the public housing community, and we're closing it. But we're going to use those kids to open up a school in the Brighton Heights community. Leave your newer, modern building to go open up a building so that that community won't have a big eyesore there. That's bad. Could be perceived as a racist closing or racist moving. Why would we not simply say, Northview, I think there are two other, maybe at least one other school where kids are bussed out of. You know, why can't we just look at the numbers of students that live in Northview Heights and just come up with something silly like, everybody who lives in Northview, you go to Northview School. Zero cost to the district and transportation because they're walkers. And I think the lady at the public hearing had mentioned that would bring that number up to at least 500, if not over 500 students. You have the Somali refugees, if I'm not mistaken, but there are some students from Africa there who are interested or are in the ESL programs. Well, we can have a site right there. And it's my understanding there are quite a few of them. Why did we not think about that? Instead, we're moving these kids. And please give me 3 good reasons why Northview would be closed.
Bentley, in terms of, I can't like name 3 good reasons off the top of my head, but what I can tell you, what we did do is we try to consider what would be best overall for kids, what district schools would make better round sizes in terms of making sure that we're maximizing, to the extent possible, getting to our average class size district-wide. And I know that Northview had diminished enrollment, and we had actually considered proposing closing it a year before, and thought, well, perhaps we could build up the enrollment by making it a K-8. But one of the problems we discovered that when we try to make a K-8 with not enough kids, it gets very inefficient, because once you get to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you have to have a science teacher, you have to have an English teacher, you have to have a math teacher. And if you only have a small number of students, as I said, it becomes very expensive to run. So that's certainly one of the things we considered. And I know that a proposal was made in regard to moving ESL programs into Northview Heights. We do have our ESL programs largely, I think a lot of the children that live in the north side of Pittsburgh that are ESL students actually were, at least this is what the families told me when I talked to them, they were in the, originally in the north Lawrenceville area and started moving, kind of spreading out a little more around the city instead of being primarily in Lawrenceville. And ESL programs had been located there. I think a lot of them still are in Lawrenceville. I cannot tell you the balance between how many are in Lawrenceville and how many are on the north side. However, we have kept our programs in Arsenal. There is plenty of room in Arsenal for those programs, and we have to exercise some efficiencies around ESL programming as well, because honestly, if we have a greater concentration of ESL students, again, we can provide services more efficiently in terms of providing, we have some technical on-site translation services, but we also have people that do that. And so it's helpful if those individuals can be located in a site where there's a higher concentration of English language learners.
Okay. It still makes very little sense to me, Doctor, with the building. We have no real plans on the building and what to use for it. And you can point to other cases in this district where kids are bused, African-American kids, are bused out of their neighborhoods to go fill up somebody else's school to keep that school open. And that's just absolutely wrong. It's kind of racist, really. And we have no justification other than that community didn't bring out enough people to public hearing, maybe, but the rationale for keeping it open makes a lot of sense. It's a community. Housing Authority is doing a whole lot of work up in that community, so we could close our eyes in 2.5 years and you could see an increase in population. And here we are closing the only thing left in that community that they were able to call their own that makes sense. This one, out of all the recommendations, I think is one that really you have to question as to why would you purposely get up under a transportation cost when you don't have to bus kids out. And so clearly this is a recommendation, or this is changes to keep another community whole. We heard similar concerns with Hazelwood. Wherever those kids are going, they're bused to keep the other school from closing. Drive past the old Bergwin to keep them open. And it's, we just have to find a way to make the system work for everybody. Because you're poor, because you're a person of color, you shouldn't always have to be put on a bus if you have something in your community. Let's make it work for them. So I won't be supporting that next week. And I just thought that it would be great if there was someone there, or that we can find someone, put someone under contract, and let's just do a pattern. Let's just check. Where are those kids going? Are all of them African Americans? And are those kids some of the ones who turn back around and throw their hands up and say, I give up. I won't go to school, I'll drop out. And so I think our question is, we have to look at what are we doing as a district and as a board to contribute to what was reported a couple of months ago, where Pittsburgh lost over 4,000 students in 5 years during the Roosevelt experiment. What are we doing that causes or contributing to that? And if we don't find a way to find it and plug it and stop it, I just think it's going to continue on. So, but that is a perfect example, and, you know, I just wish folks would reconsider that one, and then now those folks will have to scatter and come there to a brand-new building that we have to reopen, we have to staff, and we have to turn on the utilities and what other repairs we have to make, drive past their community group, their school to go there. So it makes no sense. The other point I want to make, this change with elimination of the costumes for Kappa, how did we come about that, and what happens to those students that applied for that? Isn't that a, what do you call it, a category or something, where students audition for or whatever?
It is an area, and I don't know if maybe Dr. Lippert can respond to why that particular recommendation. But I can say that originally, I know, we recommended to you that we make the reduction at Kappa by reducing the number of totally reducing the private lessons and going totally to ensemble lessons. The folks at Kappa began and looked at that. They agreed that they too could make a reduction, just like we're asking everyone else to make. But they asked if they could look at maybe some other ways to get there, and so they did. They came back with a alternate plan that actually reduced the same amount that we had asked them to reduce, and this was a part of it. So that's as much as I know. I don't know if Dr. Lippert has anything more to add.
Yeah, I'll just clarify just a little bit. In the initial recommendation, we did have the costume program always being part of that, and then Dr. Lane's providing the detail that she provided you in the board update around some reconfiguration around not solely having the private lessons take, you know, the brunt of the reduction. But with the costume program, I think if you look at the actual tab, the reason for the costume reduction is current costume program reduction or elimination is because we're currently serving 9 students, and the school has worked over several years that it's like a dual major. The 9 students are in costume, but they're also collapsed into the visual arts program. And so we're taking the skills that they're learning in the costume, and we're able to provide that support rather than run a separate costume program for 9 students. And what further supported this recommendation is that over the past 3 years, we've had a 40% reduction, and students that start in one grade don't necessarily matriculate to the next grade level in the program, so.
Okay. Well, look, I just want to caution, you know, the staff. It is often said that, you know, some people believe that we're, you know, Kappa's given everything, and they, you know, they're special, treated specially. That may be kind of true. But I just want to say that it's one of them, the theory should be, when you find something that works, we should be very careful of how we adjust. And if I'm not mistaken, Kappa as well as Rogers either are doing extremely well or they're leading the district in terms of our scores. And so something there is working. And I just want to just caution the staff to be very careful. Yes, they should have to, we should spread this pain around. How to do it, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm just reminding you that it works. And we have people interested, and people want to be a part, and coming outside of the district to come in to Kappa. So I just only want to raise that concern to make sure we're mindful of that. And then finally, with this vote next week and with the change of Westinghouse, that will also include the dropping of the academy at the end of Westinghouse?
Mr. Rentley, I can't honestly answer that. We didn't even contemplate whether that undid your vote of, I think, a month ago, or maybe 2, in regard to the name change. But I'll get back to you with an answer on that, because we didn't, honestly, right now, the name was not my greatest concern.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to make an observation about VOTEC, CTE. When we talk about combining welding with machine operations, the way that it was described, I would use the term exploratory program. This is something you would take for a semester in ninth grade to see if you were really interested. This is not an in-depth program in either area, in welding or machine operations, that's going to lead to certification and job readiness, which is what CTE should be about. I have some real major problems with the direction that we're going in. It's like little by little, we're just phasing out any kind of CTE programming. And it's really sad because there's good jobs there that pay good money, that are necessary to the function of society. And we're dropping the ball big time.
Okay, let's move on with the agenda and, excuse me, and move to the Committee on Business and Finance. The first section is payments authorized. There were no bids this month. Does anybody have any questions on the additions, deductions, extras, or credits, or the daily payments? Dr. Allen?
No questions.
Mr. Brentley?
Not at this time.
Ms. Khaleesi?
Thank you. Just on the purchasing report, under inquiry 8701, I had asked last month, I believe it was, when this came, this is for magazines, Magazine Subscription Service of America, and I asked last month if we had decreased the amount of magazines that we were purchasing. It was pulled at that point. I never got an answer. That's okay. Go ahead, Dr. Lippert.
What this is that this is for schools to purchase if they would like to, so it's almost like how we do the calculator bid. And when schools have to replace, they do, but they're not required to. So when Pete's team works on this, we adjust it based on the prior year in terms of what schools are using these resources, so it's always adjusted to match. But I consider this, in my mind, kind of like an up-to amount because it depends on how many schools decide to use their funds to actually renew their subscriptions. But it's not something that we buy for every school. It's on a purchasing list.
Is this come out of central office, this purchase?
Schools purchase them with their funds.
So you just provide them the avenue
The
to
range
take?
and the, yes.
Okay, all right. And then on the inquiry 8705, before I go to that one though, but I did ask at that meeting if somebody could give me an idea of what the amount was before. I mean, we've closed quite a few schools, and what the up-to amount is today. You don't have to do this anytime soon. I just am curious to know.
And getting the answer, we did research it. We'll have it.
Okay. And then the last question is on inquiry number 8705. This is for various locations. It's for Xerox paper. It's the contract for purchase of Xerox paper for a period of 1 year from January 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012. There's no amount to this, so I don't understand how this one works.
I think our bids were just being opened and evaluated.
Well, then
The goal is to be able to have the information for you when it comes to your packet on Friday. So I apologize that it's not updated and evaluated yet.
Okay, does that go for all of them? Because there's no amounts on that.
We end up in the same situation as far as the timing, and we'll have that for you before as you receive your packet.
So you'll have the price for the diesel and fuel and gasoline, you'll have the refuge containers, and you'll also have,
Yes, we will.
forgive me, but are you bidding these out and then you'll have 3 or 4 different prices and
They're
show us the
bid and you'll
best?
see. They're bid and they'll see the way the ones with the magazines.
Just like the bottom one.
You'll see them that way.
Okay, and one last thing about the Xerox paper. When we did the Xerox contract, did it include Xerox paper in that by any chance? No, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sumter.
Thank you.
I'm
Mrs.
sorry.
Fink?
She's back.
Mr. McCray?
I'm good.
Mr. Sumter?
No comments on that section.
All right, before we move on, I'm going to back up because, sorry, I had to go to the ladies' room and everybody kept talking. I thought I could go real quick. Back on the general authorizations. This is a challenging time for all of us to be sitting at this table, whether it's the folks who proposed these changes or we who have to vote on them next week. And it's just a very hard place to be, that nobody wants to be, but together we'll get through it. But I want to question oh, she left. Did I understand Ms. Reed to say, I just want to clarify, one of my districts that's being realigned, one of my sections, isn't necessarily favorable to the section. Did I understand her to say that when the notice goes out, there will be, people will be told what options they would have if they're not satisfied? Did I understand that's what?
No.
I don't believe that's what she said. I understood her to say that people would be notified first in time, so in case parents, we're trying to align as much as we can with the magnet selection process. So we want to make sure that if change is going to be made, parents know that, so that if they want to opt to apply for a magnet, that would still be available to them at that point. But children that are currently in a particular school, the change of the line does not mean the child has to now change schools next year. That's not what we're saying. So if the enrollment pattern changes, it just means students that enroll after the date, from then on, would be part of the new feeder. They would not, this isn't a wholesale shifting around of kids school to school based on the feeder pattern changes.
So somebody switching from, say, an 8th grader now or a 7th grader now, when it comes time for high school, their option would be to go to a magnet school if they don't like where they're being redistricted into.
Okay, if they were an 8th grader this year, they're changing schools next year anyway.
Right.
So they either could go to their feeder high school, or they could apply for a magnet program.
Okay, and this will be explained in the mailing they get. Okay. Okay. I want to thank the input from the community on the Chartiers Early Childhood. We did have a lot of them come out and speak, and I'm glad we were able to hear what they were saying. As far as closing the Langley building, that's a challenge for the neighborhood. There's a large diversity of opinion there on what the best thing for the community is. As Mr. McCray said, they're asking to invest in the West. Coming from a neighborhood that often feels overlooked by the city, by government entities, I can relate to how they feel. Sometimes you think the harder you run, the behinder you get, and I'm sure that's how they're feeling now. But I think since we are moving some, and that's coupled with the concern of Brashear, some of the parents are concerned about it not being overcrowded there. But I think with our taking some of the students out of Brashear and moving the Langley students in, I think our enrollment's only going up about 100 students. And the building can certainly accommodate that. And I did talk to the principals at Brashear, and they are looking forward to working with the Langley students. As far as then the Langley K-8 building, there are concerns as far as the younger children being in that building, but it is an absolutely beautiful building, and the older kids will absolutely love the new gym they have over there. But I would hope that once we're through this big magnitude of decision-making, we are able to meet with the community and the parents, more importantly, actually, to come up with some kind of a theme or an emphasis that says, we do hear what you're saying. They're talking about maybe environment or horticulture or something like that. I didn't know there was a greenhouse in the building until this all came up. But I would hope that we can listen to the community in that way and make this work for all of us, because that's what we have to do. It's tough times.
Yeah, and I know that Councilwoman Smith, certainly appreciate her involvement and support for the community, and her also providing us with feedback from the community. I know that surely, I understand, and I've been clear all along. I wish we weren't here. I mean, I wish we weren't. I wish none of these schools were on the list for closure. However, we know that there are some things that, frankly, that I'm asking the board to agree to do that none of us wants to do. However, we believe we can go forward and make the best of all of these proposals, and certainly if the Langley community, if the board would decide to go ahead with the K-8 at Langley, I think we probably can find some ways to work through how we can make a school that the whole community, the West End, can be proud of.
Thank you. We were joking earlier, at the beginning of the meeting, and I thought, I hope no one watching this thinks that we're taking any of this business lightly. I think sometimes when we are in the position that we're making our most strenuous decisions, that is when we joke the most, because it helps us get through something and make something unbearable a little bit more bearable. And there's nobody at the table that's taking this lightly. It's a challenging time for all of us, but we'll get through it. Okay, that was all I wanted to say before. Sorry I missed my turn. Okay, moving on to the B section, consultants and contracted services, and it's pink, and we'll start with Dr. Allen.
I just wanted to note for item B4, a contract for Dennis Moran Design. This was an RFP process. He has worked with us before and done great work for us. I understand that this is a significant decrease from what we've had in the past under marketing communications, even though, looking at it, it looks like a big item. So I think for context that folks should know that. And I don't have any other comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley.
I have a few, I may have a few a little later, but just a quick one on B3. This is for Grant Communications for, I guess they're doing the Pittsburgh Educator. And I am just wondering, how can we begin to get an evaluation as to communication dollars being spent and what our capacity is in-house in terms of what we're capable of, what we're able to do. Over the years, we spent tons and tons of hundreds and thousands of dollars. A lot of it can be perceived as duplication of services. And a lot of it, I think, if we would have put a call out district-wide, we probably could have had someone within the district to provide the service at a much, much cheaper rate. So at some point, we need to reevaluate what our capacity is in the district, and then also do an overview of the dollars that were spent and see how can we do something different. How can we assess the talent pool in the district of individuals, may not be in communications or marketing, who may be able to provide some of these services, and try to be a little bit more creative and save us some dollars. So I hope we can look into that, Doctor, because we still see ticket items here for communications and marketing, and you have a department. And so you have to just wonder, is it the best use of public dollars? So I would like to see a kind of comparison, maybe even do like a survey of the employees, and just say, hey, look, last year we gave out X amount of contracts to do the Pittsburgh Educator magazine. Does anybody out there can do it? Are you interested? Call us and let's see if it's a possibility. This is what it should look like, and let's see what we can do. I think we could get some takers. So I'd like to see us look into that. I don't have anything else at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi.
Thank you. I was just going through this as well. I just want to, as I went through the B4, this is an up to exceed amount, am I correct?
Yes.
Oh. And this is only if we need it. It's on call. We're not just putting a contract out to, so it's only if we need it at any given time. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all.
Mrs. Fink.
Yeah, I guess B4 is getting to be quite the topic here. But this is not only not in the city, it's not even in the county, it's Washington County. I understand that you like professional work, but from what I've seen of designs and artwork that the kids at Kappa have done, I bet if they were given a shot at producing a piece of literature for us, they could do a fantastic job. And I think we ought to be thinking more along those lines, because although it's a not to exceed $210,000, that's like 4 beginning teachers, guys, you know.
Thank you. Mr. McCray?
Just had a quick question on B2. Is this the kind of thing we could have done in-house? Web designer.
With B2, we do have a full-time web analyst. However, with the work that we're doing with the student information system, we are pushing more content to the web, which will be phased over a period of time. And so we will need additional support in that area, but not a full-time person.
I see under additional information that it's a previous employee that was furloughed, so I really like seeing that one. Thank you.
Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. When I look at B1, that's the board authorization is requested to enter into a contract with Strategic Solutions for the scanning of the district's permanent records from the closed buildings and to begin the scanning of student records from the district's open schools. A side comment to this board tab is that Green Innovators, who now own the Conley facility, said that in going through that facility, they were finding historical documents of the school district. And I asked them at that time, would they allow us to go through anything that they've come across, and if we wanted to retain it, they would provide us with that access. On B2, well, no, I don't have any comments on B2. I think the question was asked there or answered. On B4, B5, and B6, I have a similar concern. One, they're all, I believe, consultants. They're all going to be on call. However, the request is to renew the existing contracts for each, which one might ask whether or not should they be rebid or not. But when it says they'll renew the existing contracts, however, there will be an option for an additional 3 years for each. And then at the end of each, it talks about the operating period shall be from November 23rd, 2011 to November 30th, 2015. So the question would be, if the board's not careful, what we're doing is we're taking 1-year contracts and renewing them into possible 4-year contracts. Would that is that getting around bidding requirements, or should they be bid, or are these people good enough that we need to keep them on board again and again and again? And just to be cognizant of that, and why isn't not a 1-year renewal, not a option for 3-year renewal?
I'll take that. Lisa Fischetti, Chief of Staff. We don't bid, we do an RFP process. So these are noted as renewals because we did do an RFP process, and some of these vendors and providers are the same as we had previously. So that is why it's marked renew. So we did do an RFP process on October 14th. It was posted on the website, it was advertised. We had 6 proposals. They were reviewed and scored by 6 different district staff from 4 different departments. So I think we did have a good process. What you're seeing before you is the same process that we did 3 years before this. And it's a similar process. It's done with other items on the business and operations side where we have the option to just continue for another year up to 3 years. So it has been done before, but certainly it's the board's prerogative to determine if you want to change that.
So there was an RFP put out initially a year ago. Is that correct?
No, 3 years ago.
And this is the last year of those contracts for each.
Right, and so we did another RFP process in October, and we
Okay.
received 6 proposals.
Okay. So they're not renewals if you did a new RFP.
We can mark them as new. If you think that I've mismarked them.
I'm just asking for clarification.
Yeah.
I'm going by what it says here and whether or not they are or are not.
I think you, because it's a new RFP process, I think you might be right, and since it seems to have evoked questions, I think marking them as new would be accurate because it was a new process. So we
Okay.
can do that.
So the original was similar to what you're proposing here, is that 3 years ago or 4 years ago, they came online as one-year contracts, and then at some point in time, we voted to extend them for 3 years each?
I'm going to have to go back and defer to either Mr. Camarda or Mr. Weiss, because we do not bring these back each year for you to vote on.
No, I'm asking for just the option year. Should the option year be brought back, should the option be brought back to the board to renew for 3 years on the original one-year contracts?
The original contracts were written the same way that this is written.
And
Then I'm not
I
understanding the
don't remember the
question.
option coming before the board. That's okay, hold on.
Okay.
I don't remember the option coming before the board saying we want 3-year renewals on the one-year contracts, and if it was done before, again, the question, it's almost like you get a 1-year new contract, but it's really a 4-year contract in reality. Right, because if it happened before, we approved 4-year contracts. If it happened with a 1-year and we approved or did not approve the option for the 3 years tacked on, then that's a problem.
I have to go back and check, Mr. Sumter, to see if we brought these back each year for a vote or if we did not, and I can clarify that, by Friday of this week.
Okay.
I also want to make a clarification with regard to the amounts, because these amounts are not tagged. The Marketing and Communications Department doesn't have this kind of a budget. So when you see these not to exceed amounts, that is not coming from the Marketing and Communications budgets. This is similar to what Dr. Lippert mentioned earlier in terms of their not to exceed contracts. We have other departments and we have schools that come to us with needs, and they come to us with their own funding. So these not to exceed amounts are based on the fact that these are just forecasts based on prior usage of how other departments, like we've done, the work for the CTE department, but that came from Ms. Mike's budget, and she used, our resources. So I wanted to make sure that people know that if you were to go back and look at the marketing communications budget, we don't have these kinds of dollars.
For each of the,
I might be able to help and save time on research. I think this is built this way. My recall is they're built this way so that we're not locked into these individuals, then we have to break a 3-year contract. If something happens in their performance, and in some organizations, just changes of key people would make you not want to continue. So the managers of the contract would say, end of first year, we're done, we're not renewing the second year. They would do another RFP, come back to you as the board saying, we have a replacement, we're not a replacement, it's another new one. But this doesn't obligate, not to be our Weiss in this case, but it doesn't obligate you to, continue this in writing a 3-year contract with these organizations. And as Ms. Fischetti described, the amount that's for communications is that very skinny amount. As other parts of the organization need this service, they work through her office with the finance office to have a contract for a share of that piece of authorization.
I understand all that, and I appreciate that. However, my concern is that what looks like 1-year contracts are really 4-year contracts, because if you don't have a problem, we'll never hear about it again. Only if you have a problem will you make a change. If we don't hear any problems, they're going to get renewed each year without the board saying anything, thinking that we're voting on one-year contracts. That's the only concern. So those clarifications as far as how we did it before and whether or not we're going to do it this way or not, that would help to know whether or not it came before the board for a vote for the extended 3 years, the options. In addition, it's great to get a one-year contract with a 3-year renewal. It's you don't have to. And then the other question would be how many proposals were received for each, and if you could provide that information. Is it in the packet?
6 proposals in total were received.
For each one, each item?
No,
Total?
total.
Okay.
And we went with 3 of the 6 because of the range of services that are provided. So there's different services that different vendors listed are able to provide at different rates.
So you do one RFP and then break out and give 3 out of the 6 different tasks. Were all the tasks included in the RFP of items 4, 5, and 6?
Yes. But typically, when you look at the number of services that we have asked for, anything from, graphic design and being able to do the large posters that we unveiled and will be continuing to unveil each month for our 100-year, that isn't something we could do in-house. So that came from Dennis Moran. But that's a different skill set than doing video production that Mr. Moran couldn't do. But another vendor on this list does. So we provide in our RFP a list of the total services that we need. And typically, there's not one vendor that can provide all the services for us. So that's why we have 3 different vendors. The other reason why we want more than one vendor is because at any one time, we have several different project needs going on. And so in terms of our capacity in any one month, a vendor may not be able to handle all that we need, even if they could provide all the services to us, because we have things in parallel from different departments all needing to be done at the same time. So it broadens our reach.
Trying to get clarification on how the process works. It sounds like there's one RFP put out with a list of however many activities, and when they bid on that, or they put in their proposal, they say or list which activities they're willing to take on, or is there a proposal for all the activities or some of the activities? And then once the 3 out of the 6 are selected, then it's decided who gets what activities. Is that correct?
Mr. Sumter, I would be happy to provide you with a copy of the RFP and all the proposals. It was a very transparent process. The proposal was on the website, and we did make the board aware of it. I can't recall all the details right now, but I'll be happy to pull you all the information.
Thank you. On item B7, that's the board authorization is requested to enter into a contract to provide COBRA administrative services. Could somebody explain what those are?
So the district is obligated to provide the opportunity for individuals who have severed employment for various reasons, leaving employment, the opportunity to continue health care through the COBRA legislation, which provides the opportunity for them to continue for a set period of time at their cost under our plan. So this is the firm that would provide those services to the district.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Zuda.
Go ahead.
I just want to, Dr. Lane, I want to direct this to you. The explanation that was just given on some of these contracts for communications and marketing, I appreciate Mr. Camarda's response, but we cannot afford this luxury anymore. Just this before us is close to $500,000. Communications and marketing, when we have an entire department. And remember, even though it may be mentioned not to exceed amount, the question is, how many of those contractors exceeded the amount? How many of them went over the amount? And how many of them are here now and having an opportunity of getting a renewal that's, in so many words, is good for 4 years? We cannot give those kinds of agreements to certain companies anymore. We're laying off librarians. There's certain schools don't have librarians. We're getting ready to lay off music teachers. And so I just think that if it's worth saying that we have to prioritize things, we have to be creative in terms of producing some of the things that we see. You have to evaluate it if it's needed. I can bring you 10 parents at the drop of a hat who can tell you that they're angry when they get mailings from the district. Every other week, we get a postcard here, and it's a Mark, we read, we don't even know what it says. And it's color. We get another packet that comes in, what is this? And it's just, there's no coordination of the services. Why not do one mailing beginning of the month that would list everything you want to tell them? But each individual, and that's thousands going out, and they're pretty expensive coloring. I would hope this gentleman who called me about 6 months ago, I would hope he'd come to a public hearing. He, I think, was in the printing business, and he said, you know what, you're on the board. I said, yes. He said, I just received this card. He said, this is a so-and-so, so-and-so weight. This has something, something colors, and it has this kind of finish. You know what that costs? I said, no. He said, well, you guys just sent one for me, one for each of my kids or in my child's name, and he said, imagine thousands are going across the district. So I couldn't respond to that, but somewhere you got to reevaluate here, because I don't think we could justify the spending, and every month it comes before us, and, you know, we don't say much, but there are people losing their jobs to send out colored, glossy postcards. And so I'm just asking that we find a way to coordinate what we're going to be mailing out, evaluate these contractors. How open was the process? Did they exceed the certain amount? And, you know, where are we getting a break? Evaluate who we have in our communications and marketing. I guarantee you, if you put the call out. Kappa, if they still have it, had a state-of-the-art audio-visual room there where you can do videos and a whole bit. PCTV, nonprofit on the north side, who has been begging to partner with this district. Video, you can tape, they've been begging to be a part. And so we have to find some kind of way. And I don't know, but I'm going to guess that they can be competitive with their price. At the same time, they'd offered certification for some of our students. It's a win-win situation for us. So I'm hoping in these hard times that we not just cut on the poor kids, but we also look at everything that we're doing and every dollar that we're spending. And I'd love to have a meeting, if you'd like, to set it up with the folks at PCTV. And a call from you, Doctor, would be exciting to them. And they're servicing the community. Thank you.
I just have one question, and it's sort of directed to Mr. Campbell, but I think it's before his time. And it's on this B1. Did we not approve something a year or two ago? And that's why I'm saying it's really not to you. I feel like we approved something a year or two ago to begin permanent storage of old student records.
We did. Several times we've done it.
So what happened? Like, why are we starting it again? That's what I thought we were doing. No, it wasn't paper storage, because I remember thinking, good, because that's what it should be able to be.
Try to answer.
I'd be so many miles away from where the other records were, and, yeah, it was, I remember this, but I don't remember any of the details. Yes, I do remember that. Yes. Yeah, Pete, you remember that?
There was and I don't remember the vendor, and this may be the update and the next step related to the process, because there was a process of scanning records and archiving records. So you are recalling that you would have approved something in the past. I imagine that that contract has elapsed, and there was another process of soliciting proposals for this current process going forward.
But that's okay as long as we don't start at square one. I mean, because you wouldn't know that if there's a whole lot done.
Oh, if I could say something here.
Please.
These records, there are groups of them. And this particular contract is now with this next group of records. Along with this, there is a process going on where through the records retention policy, we're determining that there's a tremendous amount of duplication, which we're working with Mr. Campbell on to drive down this cost significantly, both in terms of the cost of scanning and the cost of running the buildings to store these records. So this is the second phase of this process. As Mr. Camarda said, this contract gets put out for proposal every so often.
And that's all well and good as long as he knows that and they're not starting at step one.
They're not starting at step one.
But you know that and he doesn't?
Well, I don't know what Mr. Campbell knows, but I know that. I'm sure Mr. Campbell is aware of this process, and we communicate frequently, but.
Chance to answer.
We, like Mr. Weiss said, we've been working very closely with the legal team, and this is the second phase of the scanning project. We have a lot of records to be digitized, and an additional part of what we're trying to accomplish during this process, if you recall, the board approved a pilot with electronic transcripts for 2 of our high schools. So making sure that we have all of the transcripts scanned will allow us to move that function to the web. But I am aware that this is a process, and this is a phase in the process.
All right, we'll move on to section C, general authorizations on the yellow. We'll start with you, Dr. Allen.
For C3, regarding the recommendation to reject the bids for the sale of unused and unnecessary school buildings, you probably don't want to hear this, but what does it mean if they are rejected? Does it mean that the process starts, I'm sorry, if this resolution is rejected, does it mean that the process starts all over? Yeah, what does it mean? And I apologize if I missed it, because I know from the last meeting that there was information that was going to be provided in terms of the cost to us, where some of these buildings seem like, for what was proposed, they seem reasonable and where it would not be rejected. I think one of the buildings was from the Shinley Heights Development Corp. For $40,000 or $50,000. So that seems reasonable. But I know that Ms. Shealy had mentioned about other costs where it would end up costing us money. So I apologize if I overlooked that. So it's a two-part question. What happens in terms of the process if this is voted down? And then the second part is, has that information been provided to us or will be in terms of the cost that we could incur for accepting some of these bids?
If you would have an opportunity, there was information we shared with the board last Friday related to the cost. And as far as the process, I believe that we would be making recommendations to Dr. Lane on what the next steps would be. And part of those next steps would be, calendar and a process that we would undertake as far as to put the buildings back out again. A timeline indicating how long they would be advertised and begin. I think some of these are worthy to go back out again. And I think that it would be our responsibility to provide a recommendation to Dr. Lane that then she would make to the board about our next steps and process and timeline.
Essentially the same process then? Because if we're saying if we vote on what you're saying to approve the recommendation to reject them, and if we're saying, and if a vote came forward to where it would not approve it, would it still go back to the drawing board?
This process was very valuable, and we learned from the process, and we learned about the feedback from people. And I think folks realize that our floor price in these projects has to be our floor price on the project, on the buildings. And I think there's some of these buildings have, desire and continued desire. So I think that, the community learned, we learned, and we'll do, we'll have a timeline that might afford people a little more time, but we need to go back out again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I have, the question been mentioned earlier, Dr. Lane, that how it seems like certain communities are always impacted negatively on a lot of the things we do here. This is a perfect example with the proposed sale of Reisenstein. You know, the community made an offer to Mark Roosevelt 3 or 4 years ago, offering to close 3 of the smaller Homewood schools, housing all of those schools in Reisenstein, I mean, it's a campus, parking, the whole bit, and it was rejected. And so here we are now, not to mention 4 years ago, 5 years ago, this board approved to put $8, maybe $10 million. Somebody at that time had the bright idea of, we'll take a middle school and we'll convert it into a high school. And we spend $8 to $10 million. Here we are 4 years later, and we're going to sell it. The proposed plan, I think, is for demolition. Am I correct, Mr. Weiss?
For demolition and development of a mixed-use development, including office, residential, and retail, with a total value projected to be about $120 million, and with attendant employment. But the building will be demolished.
Just $10 million wasn't even good for 5 years. Somebody's got to be held accountable for it. And to now have your staff recommend selling the building to be demolished, putting that community out of the way in terms of even if there was a boom in housing, you will never, ever have an opportunity to build another school like you have there at Reisenstein. And so this is one I won't be supporting, but this is a perfect example of the report that came out a couple of months ago and talked about, last year, that talked about the conditions of African American in the city of Pittsburgh, and it talked about employment and education and housing and so on. This is a perfect example. Newer building, newer facilities, and we just don't care. We'll just go ahead. It's not a problem. It's poor kids. Those are just black kids. We don't worry about them. And to have it recommended and to be considered, not to mention almost a giveaway price. We know the property is valuable, but to give it away for these kinds of dollars, it's just terrible. And you would think somebody would have would speak up on behalf of children. So I would hope my colleagues would keep in mind when they're voting for that, how can we look the taxpayers in the face after putting $8 or $10 million in there, and now you're going to sell it, knowing you're going to demolish it? And how can you justify that as a board member? And so I'm hoping that you all would have a change of heart in voting against this. The other item is the other proposed or recommendation. I'm sure that it's set to create problems. Once again, we're creating another problem on the north side with the Ridge Avenue School. Here's a building on the campus of community college. That means somebody should be thinking, sharpening their pencils and say, wait a minute, let's create a program. Our kids get access to community college. Our building, the school wants it, let's cut a deal. Reject the bids and let's go back to the table and bargain, and so we can walk away with something for our kids. Instead, we're selling it to the Light of Life. I support the Light of Life mission. Before that gets out, as a youngster, I attended church there. There used to be a church. My whole family went there. And so they do wonderful work. But in terms of matching and putting something in a community that's supportive and uplifting the community, we are not doing that. And Dr. Lane, I know that you're aware of it because I received it. I understand at least one legal action. They are just ready, just prepared, just to take us into court. And it can be avoided. And so I'm just disappointed that you're recommending it. I've said to my colleagues at the last week, and I'll say it again, I will be putting a motion on the floor to reject this bid and to, if necessary, chair a committee that would bring the parties together, and let's see what the community college is willing to do. I would love to see what the John Thompson had on the table a couple years ago. of working with the district and having students that I believe in their senior and junior year were able to get college courses. Wonderful program that can happen right there at that facility. So if you're moving forward, and this is going to be the recommendation, I will be putting something on the floor to reject that, and hope that my colleagues would support that. Finally, I don't remember discussing the extension. Here's another extension on the contract for Propel. When did this happen? And go ahead.
Propel currently has a lease on the Columbus building, which was vacant for several years before that. Propel has not filed an application for any other charters for next year. It has expressed an interest in extending the current lease, which includes a rent payment and covering all utilities. It's a very, in our view, certainly I think I speak for Mr. Camarda, a beneficial arrangement to the school district. It gives us rental income, it enables the utilities to be paid, and it removes in essence, a vacant building from that area. It's in use. So we believe it is a very favorable, advantageous proposal for the district, and we're recommending the board consider it.
Okay. But, Mr. Weiss, when we talk about an income for the district, it's not like real income? Isn't it like taking money out of this pocket?
No, it's real income.
But they're contracted through, we pay Propel for the charter schools.
We would pay them anyway.
Okay, but my point is, we pay them for the charter school, and then out of that money, they pay us for the rental.
I don't know from what money they pay the rental, but I can only tell you that, let's assume for the moment that the board would not extend this lease. So Propel would pack its bags and move to another building not owned by the district. We would be getting no rental, we would be paying utilities on Columbus, and we'd still be paying Propel. Now, frankly, and I respect you as a board member, but from where I sit, that's not a sensible deal for the district.
Well,
it's sensible to get the rental, and get the utilities paid, because that is income to the district.
Okay. And you might be right, but I'm still trying to make a point that it's our money. It's our money.
They may have students from other districts there too, I don't know.
Okay, but it's one pocket and out the other.
Well, I don't agree with your characterization, but we're not going to agree. I
Okay.
understand what you're saying.
Good. I understand that. We also, and have we encouraged them to give some kind of disclaimer, because you do know there were rumors about asbestos in that building, and if we're still associated with them, there should be some kind of disclaimer. You remember, we panicked about the Schenley and actually went and closed the building down. Have we encouraged them to do that, or is that our responsibility to send out something to the parents, let them know it has asbestos, it's under control, or it's asbestos in the other part of the building, but somewhere we have that responsibility to share that with those students or the parents that are there. Have we worked on that yet, or encouraged them to
I
do
can
that?
only tell you that all the required steps were taken when this lease was done initially. Our environmental department, which is connected to facilities, was involved with this, and we're in full compliance, and the situation there is in no way close to what existed at Schenley, but I'm not getting into that debate.
Okay, but, I mean, we're not the Schenley issue, but we did, so we're not required to give them notice.
The conditions don't warrant notice because there is no, what is called friable asbestos in the building. It's all contained, it's perfectly fine, like many other older buildings throughout Pittsburgh, both our buildings and other buildings.
Okay, and so in the case of, if there are any legal actions, are we removed from that, and that's on Propel?
We have appropriate insurance in place and language in the contract to address that.
Okay, so that means it's them?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I have another question about a school. I'll come back later.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Mr. McCray?
On item C2, the sale of the Ridge Avenue, when we sell the building, it's all of our legal, whatever, everything, it's gone. It's like you sell your house, nobody can come back, nobody can sue you to not sell the building, correct?
If the board approves this sale, you are selling the building to the party submitting the highest bid, and which also scored the highest on the evaluation process we used, one criteria of which was price, another was the covering of the existing debt. The building is sold, as we say, as is, where is. There are no zoning contingencies. Once we sell it, it's the province of the new owner to deal with whatever happens.
That was the impression I got was that we could be held in court, and not be able to make this sale, but I guess they were just blowing smoke when they made that.
Well, let's just say that if you pay your filing fee, you can sue anybody for anything at any time. But as far as I'm concerned, our bid documents gives us the right to sell the building. If someone wants to quarrel with Light of Life over what they're going to do with it, that's up to them. I can't guarantee the board we will not be named in such a suit, but in my view, we are not an appropriate party to that suit and would seek to be dismissed as a party promptly.
Yeah, I needed that assessment. And just as an aside, the existing building where Light of Life is right now is a potential fire trap and hazard to life like you could not believe. The way people, when you bring the homeless in, they do the right thing, but my goodness, if they had a fire. Thank you.
Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Hazuda. Some general comments. The Post-Gazette had an editorial the other day that the bottom line was we're doing the right things, we're going in the right directions. Thank goodness for Dr. Lane for the decision she's making and doing good for the district. However, the last sentence talked about it's good to sell your buildings, but don't sell them at a fire sale. With that in mind, another comment is that I can't find the bid information on the website anywhere. I can't find any of the proposals. And the question would be, why was that information removed? And the other would be, can that information be provided? The information on all the bids and also the criteria that was used to judge the bids. I think we have different categories of bidders that I don't know whether or not that was taken into consideration or not. For-profit entities and nonprofit entities, they should be, I think, separated. And I think that goes to the feasibility of letting a building go that's close to or underneath or near the debt on the building, but the cost benefit of getting rid of that building and getting rid of your utility cost and maintenance cost, whether that is a benefit to the district and that they don't have to pay back the remaining portion of the debt if they're a nonprofit, whereas if they're a for-profit, they do. So that goes into the decision-making. The other item is that on item C3, will the board be given the opportunity to decide yea or nay on any of those buildings, or is that a one vote on all the buildings? I'll take an answer to that question now.
Let me address a number of your points. First of all, taking the last one first. As far as C3, the board has bids before it that we're recommending be rejected. So the board either has to reject the bids, and they're each separate bids. I mean, so that you can conceivably reject all, and if the board wants to decide to award a bid on one of the properties, it can.
Okay, that's
you have to do one or the other. These bids have to be resolved. So if, for example, if the board wishes to reject all the bids under C3 but award the bid to Party A for this building, you have the power to do that.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Right.
Thank you.
Secondly, with respect to the website, Last Friday, we received a phone call from one of the bidders that we asked for a lot of information in the bid, and one of the bidders it was prominently posted on the documents that these documents would be made public. This bidder included his Social Security number in the material. It was posted, and he reacted to that, and so we spoke with the district and had the material removed. Now, we're going to work to get it back up with that out of there, but that's the reason for that. It was on the website for quite a while, including all the proposals, all the criteria. As far as the prices, and I did read the Post-Gazette piece, the two bids that we're recommending be awarded, the Reisenstein bid is within 10% of the appraisal. I believe it is a very good bid, and on a cost-benefit basis, it certainly covers the debt, more than covers the debt. We have a net amount left, and there is a significant upside in terms of future real estate tax revenue and earned income tax revenue from the employment there, plus the bidder anticipates building housing there as well. With respect to the Ridge Avenue bid, it also, both bidders, well, the two of the three bidders, because the one was very low, two of the three bidders are both tax exempt, so there would be no consequence either way. And that too was compatible with the appraisal. And so we believe in those cases we're getting a fair return. And I think those are your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss, for those clarifications and answers. Anytime we talk about selling buildings, closing buildings, as long as we serve communities all the same way, whether they come out or not, whether they're engaged or not. And sometimes, this is another comment, but if schools are so important to certain communities, we have the power to revitalize certain communities and help certain communities by the location of our buildings and programs, to keep that in mind also. Again, if it's not put on the website, if they can just be emailed to us, they're all PDF files, or to me, I'm not going to speak for the other board members, whether they would want them or not.
I can work with Mr. Kamara to do that. We could do that.
The thought was because they were there so long, they would be there, at least up until the time we voted. And like I say, I was sending the link out to other people to go to there, and then when I went there, it said call Mr. Weiss, but I figure that would probably take longer than just getting the information to review. So again, different entities that were bidding, we should take that in consideration. And for myself, I would just like to have that information to review before next Tuesday. Thank you.
Just wanted to make two quick announcements. Dr. Lane, if you could, please send a memo out to all the schools, or to our maintenance department, that when and if any school is sold, that they not touch any of the trophies, records, or photos that are left in the buildings. Actually, it would be great if someone would go in and to secure them for the history value of some of the buildings, because we've actually sold some buildings, and next thing you know, everything was cleaned out. It would be great if we can do that. And then when we do, that we would contact the local, the Hines, as well as the August Wilson, and if that school has an alumni association, before we decide to do anything with it. And the final thing I wanted to mention, I just wanted to say two things I wanted to mention, is to say a special thank you. I only know her first name. It's Diane. She is a school crossing guard, I think, in Heron Avenue. It is my understanding Yes, this morning, between 9 and 9:30, there was a shooting there. There's about 20 students that actually crossed that five-way intersection. How one guard handles that is beyond me, but it is my understanding in a split second, this guard moved quickly, pushed kids behind vehicles, kept an eye out, all in a matter of seconds, and it is my understanding nobody was hit, hurt, or harmed. I'm not even sure if the shooter got his target, but from what I understand from my coworkers who witnessed it, said it was unbelievable to stand there and just to watch somebody run down the street, not caring about cars or kids or buses. The bus driver who was picking the kids up, I understand, he actually took off. He said it was just that scary. So whoever Diane is, and Doctor, it'd be great if we can find him a nice little thank you card from the district, would be really, really helpful. But her name is Diane is all that I know, school crossing guard. And finally, I wanted to send just a thank you note, because I don't know if we're going to be having another meeting to say thank you, and if we do, I will, to Brianna Woodson, as a student at Perry, and Danielle Rupel, who is a student at Alderdice. They will be participating in the Ivy Charitable Endowment Cotillion. And it is a wonderful, wonderful event, and we want to say congratulations to them for representing the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And when they get the booklet out or pictures, I'll be more than happy to get them to my colleagues to see it. It's a wonderful, wonderful event, and hopefully in 2 more years, we'll be able to try to get more of our young ladies into the program. They go through, I think, 4 or 6 weeks of training and interviewing, and it's pretty extensive, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I wanted to say congratulations to them. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Azuda. Just one comment regarding the sale of the buildings. A lot of the input or folks that were concerned were saying that they didn't have enough time, or that we didn't reach out far enough to get interested bidders, and saying that some of the other buildings, that even though they were recommended to reject the bids, that if we have I guess a bigger process, having gone through it already, but if we reach out further, that we may get more folks interested in our buildings. And also, along with Mr. Brentley was saying, that shooting was this morning approximately 9 a.m. and the party was about half a block up the street from the intersection, but was aiming toward the intersection, and 6 or 7 rounds went off, and that was quite upsetting this morning. So we just are glad that none of the kids were injured, or none of the crossing guard, or nobody that we know of that was injured. But thank you.
Thank you. On November 15th, 1911, 61 separate and independent school districts came together under the direction of one newly formed 15-member board to form the Pittsburgh Public Schools. So this week we celebrate our 100th anniversary, and we will be celebrating it all year. But if you look around the table, Dr. Lane representing the superintendent from 100 years ago, and including representing, but including our stenographer, this is what a 15-member board would look like. So can you imagine how late those meetings went? So
Most of them just name schools after them.
Oh, there you go. There you go. All right, so we are really lucky that we don't have a 15-member board to start with, and we are very lucky to start our second 100 years with Dr. Lane as our very capable and healthy and wonderful superintendent. So thank you. Meeting's adjourned.